first and foremost, I've seen the video, obviously, and that video is disturbing. No two ways about it. And the other thing I need you to know is there are a lot of other angles and videos and perspectives that you need to see. The issue around that is timing, because as you know, body-worn camera and all videos that are in our custody and control, we have to seek the approval through a judge to release that. And that is exactly what we're going to do. As you've heard, I did reach out to request that the State Bureau of Investigations review this incident to verify and to determine whether or not to verify, but to determine whether or not any laws have been violated. Also, parallel will be an investigation internally to see if any directives or policy or training protocols have been violated during that incident as well. All of that is going on right now. I can talk broadly, but can't get into a lot of the specifics. But I can tell you I didn't like what I saw, and I can't wait until I can share more. Another thing I want to say is this community should be very proud of the work our officers have been doing over the last few days. I wish we could have kept this one incident from happening, which I think overshadows all of the positive that I've seen. I've seen a lot of community members and a lot of our cops doing some fantastic work, stepping up when our community needs us most. However, this is something like anything else that we deal with. We will be as transparent as absolutely possible, but more importantly, hold all of ourselves accountable. If laws have been violated, there will be accountability. If policies have been violated, there will be accountability. If protocols have been violated, there will be accountability. And here's the other big thing about that is, unfortunately, these things take time. And I know everybody's frustrated, so am I. I've seen a lot of things that I want you to see, and I'm pushing for that to happen sooner rather than later, but those things are out of my control. At this point, I do want to allow for your questions because that's why we're here, and I don't want to interfere with your need to get to the government center to see what is transpiring there at 6 o'clock.
Chief, your communications to the media from the department concerning the 4th Street incident, characterized it as regrettable. What were you referencing there when you said that the situation was regrettable? Just the way that it played out? Was it tactics? What was it that specifically was regrettable there?
I just don't like the way it looks. I wish it told the full story. I just don't like how it looks. And it flies in the face of where we are morally as an organization, because our goal is to allow for lawful protests. However, what is missed sometimes is when violence occurs and property damage occurs, it's no longer a lawful protest, it's a riot. So it's all troubling to me. But most importantly, I don't like how it looks, and I don't like the fact that it's going to take time before the full story can get out and tell truly what happened, and then there can be the appropriate accountability. There are a lot of people asking for a lot of things that can't be delivered because there is a due process which protects everybody's rights.
Another question that just came in. Mayor Lyles said at her earlier press briefing that they're going to take a look at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's use of chemical agents. Your position there when it comes to the importance, the use, deployment of chemical agents in riot type of situations? Sure.
It should be open to review. What we're doing right now is just that. As I said, I got the State Bureau of Investigations looking at a review of whether or not we violate laws and an internal review of our policies. So that's fine. But the other piece of that is we do have community members and our cops to protect. There's a reason that we have civil emergency equipment. It is not for looks. It is not to intimidate. It is to protect. If we don't have cops who put themselves in harm's way, we have total chaos. And the reason that we have chemical agents is we do want to have the opportunity to encourage people and to give people more incentives to disperse when we've given dispersal orders and their presence is then illegal. Because the other option that I've seen in other places is a bit more violent, a lot more aggressive, and officers are then using shields to push people and batons to move people. I don't want to get there. I think that optic is horrible.
You're far more inclined to find yourself in a conflict if you don't have that tool on your tool belt?
I believe so. Again, that's not something I can tangibly tell you with total evidence, but what I can tell you is it helps us be a bit more restrained, and our people aren't using physical force, which looks horrible, which harkens back to what we've seen in the 50s and 60s. Don't want to repeat history that way. So chemical agents give us an opportunity to gain compliance without the physical force and all that looks like.
Speaking of history, some harkened back to 2016 and wondered if our position in 2020 is different from 2016 when it comes to strategy and the deployment of riot agents.
Love it. Yes. Here's what's interesting. Looking back, we do things differently. There have been tactics that we no longer use. We don't use the wooden dowels that we would shoot at your legs back then now. That is adjustments that came from our Civil Emergency Command. That's our people trying to be better and more humane. So yeah, tactics have changed. But what hasn't changed is our philosophy. We want to use the least amount of force necessary to gain control of a situation that has devolved into violence. And that's the philosophy that we will continue. It hasn't changed since 2016, even though some tactics have been improved.
You mentioned that violence. Was your officers encountering a good bit of violence last night on the line? No, there was a 4-hour stretch that it was quite busy out there.
We have multiple incidents, and that's why I'm really looking forward to being able to display a lot of the video evidence. I don't want people to just talk to me and hear what I'm saying and believe my words. I want them to see for themselves. We have but one piece of video that's gone viral. I want to show everything, so full context to the scene, including why officers were using chemical agents in the first place. And that is because of violent assaultive behavior towards them, bricks, rocks, frozen water bottles. We obviously continue to get weapons from those who are committing violence. So we want to show the full story so people can then decide for themselves and see for themselves when things go from lawful protests to violent riots.
And some would argue that the who is no less important than the why and the what. Has the department determined who made that call last night? And if so, will there be any kind of internal investigation to find out whether that person who did make the call, actions were appropriate?
Ultimately, I can't talk in great detail because it starts with me. I give the authorization through our directives, and I authorize us to use chemical munitions when we see violent riots, when we see acts of violence towards community members and ourselves, and destructive behavior towards property. So all of that is up for review, and it starts with me. So I am a part of the people being investigated as well, so I can't really get into that as much about finger pointing because I am holding the bag. It's up to me. It's my decision to determine whether or not that is a policy that we move forward. I made it. I'll stand behind it because when it goes from a lawful protest to a riot, we have to use the appropriate force to establish and maintain order.
There was also a narrative that was churning up last night that you had officers on the second level of a parking deck in an elevated position that were firing down pepper balls at some of the protesters. What have you been able to identify up to this point?
All of that we're looking at. What I do know is there were people in higher levels. They were trying to make sure nobody got up there and continued to throw items from a higher level on our people. But as far as whether or not it was deployed at people, I haven't seen any evidence of that yet. But again, we're one day into this review in parallel investigation.
Last night you had more than a dozen protesters that were locked up, that were arrested. Charlotte Observer's asking what prompts the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department to arrest a protester.
Right. The clear line of delineation is when a lawful protest goes from a protest to a riot, we give dispersal orders, and anybody who remains after being given opportunity to leave is then in violation of the law. So Also, we specifically try to strategically target those who were really most assaultive and the true agitators, those who we have physical evidence that they've assaulted people or tried to damage property. We want to get them, but also we need the whole crowd to leave because everybody who remains is then in violation of the law.
And is that continual? I think there's a lot of confusion out there in the community as to whether you issue that first dispersal order. Is that continual? If the group disperses and they reassemble a block or two away 5 minutes later, do they have to have another dispersal order to get them to disperse, or is the first one continual?
Very good question. When we make the first, it goes until people have dispersed. So we do give repeated because we want to make sure everybody hears us, and we want to give people the opportunity to cooperate. So the first one, and then ideally we'd have a time sequence and allow for more to come along. But when we give the first, that's the one that people need to move on and react to. And we continue, even if they come back together, we continue to give them. But the first one is the one that matters most. That's the one that determines this is now a riot, so everybody needs to disperse.
And last night, if I'm not mistaken, there were several. Was it 9 dispersal orders?
I hear that. I don't know exactly, but I hear multiple. I know it's in excess of 5. I'm hearing 9. I'm hearing maybe in the double digits, but all of that is part of what we'll find out in the investigation. But I do know it was repeatedly, and you'll hear on the radio traffic, repeated in timestamps, repeated dispersal orders throughout the incident.
Charlotte Observer, again, big on de-escalation, not just a buzzword, commitment that you and your administration through training and development have really put a great emphasis on. They want to know what de-escalation looks like during a protest, independent of what you have with your constructive conversation team.
Fine, love it. Fantastic question. The best example I have, and we have it on video too, one of the videos we want to release is here at the police headquarters, we had a group that was agitated. They were agitated, but they were not violent. And they were not assaulting our officers. They were not destroying any property. We had initially had our civil emergency unit there in line at Alexander Street. When we saw that there was no violence, we saw that there was an opportunity to de-escalate. We moved our bikes in, who have no civil emergency equipment, to help de-escalate. We had our CEU personnel back away and get out of sight, and it worked well. When we have the opportunity and time, that is exactly a part of our strategy, which is within our overall philosophy. That is a specific example of what de-escalation can look like, but it goes both ways. We can't pull out our civil emergency when we're being attacked, property is being destroyed, and we're obligated to intervene and establish and maintain order. So de-escalation happens when we have the opportunity, time, and cooperation from those who are protesting.
We talked a lot about some of the environment on the ground there. What are some of the activity, some of the response that the men and women on the front line are getting? There's been a number of officers who reported being assaulted and items hurled at them, fireworks launched their way.
Sure. Are we talking more morale? Is that your question?
Well, I guess there's 2 questions. What are they specifically encountering?
Sure, let's stay there. What are they seeing? They're seeing during the day upwards of 10 and 15,000 lawful protesters who are getting their First Amendment rights exercised. And we facilitate, we encourage, and accommodate those. Then at night, we're seeing it transition from lawful to illegal when it becomes violent and property is being destroyed. What they see when it becomes a riot is rocks thrown at them, bricks thrown at them. They see people bringing guns and knives and other weapons to a demonstration that has also become a riot, which makes it all unlawful. And they've been pelted. We've had officers take a brick to the head. That's what they're seeing when it becomes a riot. Very violent behavior and very destructive behavior. And that is what we're not going to tolerate. We have to do what we need to do within the boundaries of law and our policies to protect the community, our cops, and the property here in the city.
Yeah, is there a distinction between the demonstrations that you encounter, the men and women encounter in the day, than they do at the night?
There's a very, very, very distinctive and defined difference. Yes. Um, the daytime, we've had one that was NAACP, one that was led by some religious leaders, one that was multiple. Just to be quite frank with you, that have been there was one led by Miss Otley, who's an activist down in Freedom Park, all of which were lawful. And again, I'm not asking for peace because all of us are hurting. This is a difficult time, and it's disappointing that we're in it and still talking about it. So we get that. And the lawful ones aren't the ones that people are talking much about. It's just when there's a different element, a young, assertive, violent, and destructive group that comes in at night, intent on hurting people and destroying property, that things change. So there are very distinct groups that are doing this. The vast majority have been lawful. But those that are illegal, we got to deal with them because we got to keep people safe and we got to protect our city.
You mentioned morale. You referenced it a couple of moments ago. How is morale? What are you hearing on the streets?
Well, up until last night, when we had the incident that went viral, morale was at an all-time high. I'm hoping it remains so. We need our officers to continue to do what they've been doing, coming in, strapping up, and trying to continue to de-escalate and keep everybody safe, but being ready for the violence that continues to hit us every night. And I think morale is still good. I hope our officers know that when I start this investigation through the State Bureau of Investigations, it is because I'm confident that I want the truth. That's what I want to hold people accountable for. Facts that show the truth. If you violated the law, I won't rest until you're held accountable. If you violated policies, the same thing. But if you've done right, and the vast majority of our people are doing some fantastic, honorable, and amazing work, I'm going to highlight that too. So I think morale is good. This is a punch to the gut because we don't want to be perceived as being anything but what our mission is about, which is protecting the sanctity of life and holding ourselves to a high standard. And so when all's said and done, I believe when everybody sees everything that there is to see, they'll agree that one perspective doesn't tell the full story, and they'll see exactly what our people are really about.
We'll jump back, if we could, a second, back to 4th Street, that video that it's essentially gone viral.
Yes.
With 100 million views around the world. Sure. Katie Peralta with Charlotte Agenda was asking, this word on the street that a dispersal order was never even issued before officers began to engage and deploy pepper balls and chemical or riot control agents last night. What have you been able to discern up until this point, Chief?
That is not true, and I can't wait to show you, without a doubt, evidence thereof.
Amanda from Charlotte Observer, there had been some indication earlier in the week that there could be some progress along the lines of your duty to intervene policy. Any headway there? If so, what can you tell us?
Yes, and again, not to dramatize things, but we all saw the video of the murder of Mr. Floyd, and I said immediately, we got to do something. I remember the conversation with our Citizens Review Board, the debate constantly, and how we could make it work for us here. And we do have some language, and that will be a full-fledged policy enhancement this week. We do have what is neglect, but we're hyper-specific now about the duty of officers to take action when they see something like that, something that is an affront to everything we stand for, and that is an abuse of power. So we will have something that people can see as that duty to intervene. It will be more specifically how we treat it, which is if you neglect to do what we expect you to do to stop something like that, you have violated the spirit of what we stand for, but also the specificity around one of our policies.
Is this reactionary, because of what's going on in the country right now? You feel pressure there to really work on this and put this on the front burner because of what the climate is?
Do I feel any pressure to do the right thing? No, I feel a duty to do the right thing. And this has been something that we've been trying to codify in a way that makes sense not only to the public, but also to our people. Just saying you have a duty to intervene can be just words on the page. We're doing more than that. We're showing now a tangible example of what it looks like to fail to do your duty. So this is an opportunity to get better, and we're going to take this opportunity.
You know, I think I'm reading this correctly here from Ashley over at WCNC is asking, do more violence result from so much violence already seen? As the police chief, what's your message that you've got for officers?
My message is broader than just the officers. To the officers, I love what you stand for and what you're trying to do in some tough times. I respect you more than you know. I don't think I deserve to lead you, but I'm proud that I am. To the community as a whole, I implore you to to follow the example we see every day in these lawful protests. Get your word out. And you notice I don't say peaceful. I don't say civil. I'm saying lawful. That is the standard. As long as you're not committing violence and destroying property, we want you to get your word out. We're going to facilitate your ability to do so. We're committed to that. And most people see that already. You've experienced it. You saw it on 277. There was not a can of chemical munitions popped. There were no physical movements from the officers to push people. We just allowed for cooperation, gave instructions, and cleared the interstate. That is what we aspire to be, and that's how we want to go about it. But we need the public to do what happened there and cooperate with us and stay within the boundaries of law. Make it legal, make it loud if you care to, but just don't make it violent.
Yeah, nobody would walk away with a misunderstanding. The overwhelming, I think you believe the overwhelming majority of protesters.
I know the overwhelming majority of people who came to express themselves did so lawfully. I don't assume, I don't guess. I know it, I saw it, I experienced it, and I'm appreciative of it. I want us to do more of that and only that.
What else you got, Chief? If you could leave the community with anything this evening, it would be what exactly? Respecting more demonstrations tonight?
Just what I just said. Have your voice heard. Express your pain. Release that. Do so lawfully. Don't violently assault anyone in the city. Don't destroy any property. Make sure your message is heard, received, so that we can act on it. To our officers, I'm proud of the work the vast majority of all of us are doing, trying to make our city safer. You're doing fantastic work. I could not be more proud of the work that I see. We're not perfect. We're going to hold ourselves accountable, but also we got to celebrate the good. And I see way more good than I do bad. Thank you, and be blessed.